Hey guys, welcome back. This is Julien from OnTrack Cycling. So I'm super excited about this project today. We're going to build the flagship race bike from Titan Racing. Okay, so it's a new model that came out in 2019. So this is the Cypher Pro. It's a full carbon, full suspension race bike that's designed for multi-day stage racing or full-out cross-country racing. So it's a very comfortable ride, but super aggressive and light and super responsive as well. So let's build this. Okay guys, so before you undertake any build-up projects like this, you want to make sure you have all the right equipment that's ready, all the grease, the type of lubricants you're going to need to build the bike up, and obviously all the tools. Okay, I can't stress this enough, because if you're not prepared, you're going to end up starting to do some stuff on the bike and then you're like, oh man, I'm missing this tool. You'll go to the workshop or to the hardware shop, and then you're going to forget where you're at the build, and it's going to be a mess. We're going to just go through quickly what we need to do the build properly. So you've got an anti-seize grease. Okay, that's basically to use with aluminium components, whether it's aluminium against aluminium or aluminium against carbon. It's quite good to use this to prevent chemical reactions from happening and everything seizing up after a while. You've got your carbon compound, so it's basically grease with small little particles inside that creates friction between carbon components, and that allows you to put less pressure on it. Because you have more friction, you can put less pressure. I've got a thick water resistant synthetic grease here that I usually use on bearings and places that get really exposed and work through. So this is really good. Lighter grease, that's usually to put on threads and stuff like that. And then I've got a white lithium grease in spray that I use for places that are hard to reach. I've got my brake cleaner that's used in the last part of the build. Multi-purpose cleaner, that's actually a great spray to have around to clean components before installing them. So first thing first, we're going to put some carbon compound on the seat post. This compound is specially designed to allow you to use less pressure on the clamps so you don't damage your carbon components. So just a little dab, rub it with your finger, even coat. You want to use anything between 4 to 6 Newton meters. It's usually written on the parts. Okay, so I'm not going to go crazy on this right now. I usually use my thick blue grease. Okay, I don't put a lot, just enough. Okay, the grease will play two roles that are important here. It will first allow the whole system to rotate freely and with less friction, but also protect your bearings from water infiltration. So this is why you want to use a really good quality water resistant grease. So I've got my bearings. I've put a little bit of grease on the bearings. As you see, we're not talking about a lot here. If you put too much grease, it's just going to attract too much dirt, and it's going to build up in your system, and it's not going to be clean and swift working. So just put enough for it to be lubricative and protective. Okay. So you hold your bearing in. Everything's in place. I'm just going to put 2 spacers at the bottom, and then install the stem. Put 1 spacer here. Okay, so now I have all my spacers in place. I'll put the stem cap. You don't want to put too much pressure on this, because it will compress all the bearings together. Okay, so you want to put enough pressure so there's no play into the headset. Okay, so I'll connect my back brake. The back brake is already on the mounts there. SRAM is pretty good with this. The whole system comes with tools to install it. You don't need to bleed it. So I've already done the installation here. So I'll just go straight in. I've put some light grease. So this is in the instance where I would use the lighter grease just on the threads here. Yeah, install that in with your hand until it's tight. Okay, then you take a 8mm spanner key Okay, so now you put the cover back on. Cool. So the front brake, it's already installed, so I'm just gonna put the brake caliper onto the fork. Okay, so I'm gonna go inside the fork, okay, and install it like this. In case you're wondering, the cable always goes out on the top. Never install it like this. On the threads of these calipers, very often there's already Loctite that's installed on them. You can see here there's a blue Loctite at the bottom. Okay, you can put some grease in there to prevent reaction or corrosion, but yeah, with the Loctite in place, I usually don't mix the two because then the Loctite doesn't work anymore. Okay, so the reason I went inside with the cable is if I had to go outside, every time I would be riding across branches and stuff like that, it would catch the cable and maybe break the whole system. So you go inside to protect the cable, and then you have a clip. On most forks you have clips like this. You push the cable in and that's it. Okay, so this is a threaded bottom bracket from SRAM. Okay, so you can see on the bottom bracket, when it's whole like this, you have left and right. Okay, left and right. So this is when you put the bottom bracket like this, with the front of the bike in front of you. So this goes to the right and this goes to the left of the bike. Okay, very important. This is where this anti-seize grease comes into play. This is an aluminium cup. Okay, threading into one aluminium cup in the frame to prevent oxidation from happening and the whole thing seizing up on you. You want to put some of that grease. Okay, like I've already put some here. It's not a lot, but you don't want to go too crazy. Okay, because if everywhere on your bike where you put too much grease, you're gonna be overdoing it, and really the purpose of it is just to prevent corrosion. Okay, and to allow you to undo your bottom bracket later. And if you put too much, it's just gonna attract more dirt and grime, and it's gonna wear out your whole thing quicker. So you don't want to go too crazy on this. Yeah. So now I'm introducing the bottom bracket in, and you'll see on the cups there are arrows. So that's the way you need to rotate the cups to tighten them into the frame. For the cups, they recommend to put 50 Newton meters of torque. Okay, so I've got I've got my torque meter here with a special cup for these bottom brackets. Always use the right tools. Okay, I can't stress this enough, because if you can go ahead and put a piece of rag and plumber's pliers, but it's not ideal. You're gonna end up damaging your equipment, maybe damaging even your frame, which is a very costly exercise. So if you invest in the right tools, I know it's a bit expensive, but if you do this a lot, it's worth it. Otherwise, we have them at the shop. Yeah. Now we're going to install the crankset in. So this is where I go and use my lighter grease. So I put some grease into the thread. Okay, so this is where it's going in, just a little bit. Okay. Now on the axle. Okay, if you look at this, it's very slightly tapered in the middle, and the bearings of the bottom brackets are actually just on these two sides here. So it serves no purpose to put grease here. So you just put a little bit of grease here and here. Okay, you could also put some grease right on the bearing interface here on each side. So I put my spacer in. Okay, then I put my crank arms, make sure they're opposite facing each other like this, then put an 8mm Allen key and start threading it in. Okay, it's catching now. Okay, again, they tell you 54 Newton meter, okay, with the Allen key inside. So I really go in and put some proper force, and then I'll go in with the torque meter afterwards. Okay, This is a system from SRAM. It's called the dub system. So basically it accommodates for different bottom bracket standards and width. So you put your bottom bracket in, you tighten the bolt on the drive side, and this is a system to adjust the pressure on the bearings. Okay, so if I undo this completely, you can see there's lateral movement in the crankset. And you don't want that. So basically you put your bottom bracket in, and then you tighten that little wheel here until you don't want to go crazy again. Same principle as the headset bearing. If you go too crazy on this, the pressure will compress the bearings and it will be super rough and won't turn properly. So you want to tighten it just enough so that there's no lateral play into the bottom bracket, and then you tighten it here. There's a little screw. There's only one screw to tighten, so you tighten that screw here. So for the shifting cables, okay, most of the high-end shifting cables, they come in stainless steel and they already have kind of a smooth coating to it. So when you put it into the housing, it's smooth, and it's smooth for longer. What I like to do before I put my cables in, I spray a little bit of lubricant. It's usually a very, very light grease. Sometimes we use some mineral oil, same stuff we use in the brakes from Shimano. It's non-corrosive. I use this. It's a multi-purpose cleaner. There's solvent in this. Okay, so you don't want to put the cable straight into the housing again. So I just go like this, just a little bit. Put the end cap on the end of the housing and into the shifter. It's coming out here. I'll put the end cap here. I'm going to install the derailleur. So the derailleur goes onto what we call a derailleur hanger. It's usually an independent piece from the frame, and it's aluminum. Okay, because there's a lot of vibration here, I use a little bit of Loctite. Okay, the Loctite will just prevent this bolt from undoing itself when you're riding. Okay, so I'm going to feed the cable through here. Okay, then you go through here. Before tightening that cable on the derailleur, we want to make sure on the shifter we are on the smallest cog here, which is the hardest speed. Okay, so you make sure you're on the smallest one, and you take your cable and you pull a decent amount of pressure onto it, not too much because otherwise it will move the derailleur. Okay, we're going to adjust the derailleur afterwards, so for now it's good, and I release that. We're going to install the discs on the wheels. Okay, so you have two different disc sizes. You have the 160mm and 180mm. Usually the bigger brake, the bigger disc is for the front, and the smaller one is for the back. Okay, so I'm going to install the 180 at the front. So when we finish installing the screws, okay, you don't want to tighten one screw completely and then the other one. You tighten everything so it holds it in place, and then you go one last time around just to make sure you're tight. And then you take your torque wrench, you put it on 6 Newton meters. You can go all the way to 8 on these ones, and then you go, and when you click, it's good. Okay, so I'm going to install now the front lockout. So I'm going to take the first hole here, and it will go straight into the fork, and then the second one here will go into the frame and then out here and towards the back suspension. So these are super sensitive screws, okay, and they get rounded off super quickly, so you want to make sure you use proper tools that are in good conditions, otherwise you're going to damage them. For the back lockout, we're going to put a barrel adjuster into the line, because the amount of line that needs to be pulled to lock both suspensions are not equal. So the barrel adjuster will allow us to adjust the pressure on the back cable just to make sure we've got the right amount of pull to lock the suspension. You want to put the barrel approximately 6 centimeters from the lockout here. Okay, so we're going to cut that. All the pedals, they come with little washers like this, so they go on the pedals first, and they will be between the crank and the pedals. Okay, and then you put a little bit of grease on the threads of the pedal. That's just to prevent corrosion and so they don't get stuck. Okay, so my 4mm Allen key. These are a little bit tricky to put on, but it's a great system. It works well. So you want to unthread that to the max. Just watch out so it doesn't come out. It's just going to make your life easier installing the saddle. Okay, so you have this piece that goes at the bottom. So you want to place that into here. Okay, then you take your 4mm Allen key, always ready when you're installing the saddle. Okay. Before we take the bike off the stand, I'm just going to make sure all the gears shift properly. Okay, and I have my hand cap and my cable cutter ready, so when it's done I can just cut and place the cap end on the cable so it doesn't fray and open up. Okay, there we go. Okay, what you're looking for here is a straight chain line. Okay, if the derailleur is a little bit off to the side, that means you need to adjust your limit screws and pull it back in. And if you're shifting all the way and you can't shift anymore and the derailleur is a little bit in, that means your limit screw is too tight and you need to let it off to align the derailleur pulleys to that biggest cog here. Take my cable cutter. You want to leave a little bit off so you can adjust it later. And then you put your end cap on. And you crush it. Okay. Move it around a little bit, see if there's no rattling. Check the headset is tight enough. The wheels are sitting in properly. You can check if there's no play here, and that's good. I'm happy with that. Okay, so now both suspensions are open. Okay, or not? Yeah. So when I push in, you can see it's moving here. The front is also moving. And if I lock the suspension now, see both of them move at the same time. The front locks, I'm happy with that. In the back, I think we could tighten the back a little more. I've adjusted the knob here and now the suspension should lock. I'm happy with that, it's pretty solid. I'm happy with the suspension, so I can cut the cables. Clean look. Okay, so this one you want to be a little bit shorter because that's gonna rub against your legs if you cut it too long. And you see how the cable frays like this, you can just twist it so it goes back to normal. Okay, that sometimes happens when you cut the cable that's under tension, so it's nothing to be worried about. It's just, it can just happen. Okay, and then you crush it. Okay, cool guys, so the bike is ready. Now I'm just going to go around and do the correct Newton meterage on all bolts, so to make sure it's tightened properly, and I'm going to do some adjusting on my cockpit and my saddle. You can see it's spawning up. So I would say a place to start with saddle and cockpit tuning. Okay, you want your saddle to be leveled So I'm gonna just level my saddle for now. So if you have a level at home, you can use it. It's actually the correct way to do it. You use your level and you make sure your tire is sitting at 0 degrees. Okay, that's your starting point for tuning. And then I suggest you just go for a little ride, see what the pressure points are like for you, and if you would like to have your saddle sometimes incline at the front a little bit, so you have a little bit less pressure at the front of the saddle. For very aggressive riders that like to ride their cockpit really low, they very often, you'll see even on World Cup settings, the saddle is really pointing down quite aggressively, and that's okay if you're doing a short and intensive race, and you're going to be sitting on the saddle for not too long, and even sometimes sprinting most of the time, so that's not a problem. But if you go on the long stage races and stuff, you want your saddle to be flat or even a little bit inclined at the front, but not too much, okay? But it all comes down to personal preferences. So I like to ride my saddle a little bit inclined. I have no specific measure for it. It's just I tune it and then I see how I feel on my bike, and then I adjust it accordingly. Okay. For cockpit, when you're going to be sitting on your bike, okay, a general rule of thumb is you want to be comfortable sitting on your bike like this, and you want this line of your finger, your wrist and your arm to be straight. So right now for me the right setup would be like this. Okay, if you go too far down, what's going to happen is you're going to have one pressure point on your hand here, and that will create some numbness. So you can go one line, and I suggest if you have a lot of numbness in your hands and you feel uncomfortable, you can pull it up a little bit, and that'll be right for you. And then that's another tuning. You want to space it a little bit more. I would say general rule of thumb again, if you put your clamp here, that side of a clamp will be one finger apart from the end of your grip, so that will give you a one finger touch on your brake lever. Okay guys, that was the build of the Titan Racing Cypher RS, the full suspension race bike from Titan Racing from 2020. Okay, I hope you appreciated the video and you liked it. If you have any questions about some of the lubes or techniques I've used to build this bike, or about tuning and stuff, do not hesitate to comment or leave your questions down below, and I will make sure I'll answer them. Also, do not forget to subscribe and like our channel, and go on Facebook and Instagram and check out our daily feeds. Cool guys, see you later, cheers.